Yo, what's happening, guys? It's GM Cody, and welcome back to the channel. It has been some time since I've made a video. I've been pretty quiet lately, and it's been a nice break, but I think I'm ready to get back to making some videos, especially because tonight I have a little bit of a special announcement, and that is that I will be releasing a role-playing game pretty soon. I think the cat's kind of out of the bag at this time. I think some of you know this, but a lot of you are not aware of it. That me and my good friend Andy Young are currently in the process of making a role-playing game called Wizards of Shadow City. What is Wizards of Shadow City, you might ask? Well, it is a pulp noir role-playing game in a urban fantasy setting. It is based in an alternate 1938, though you could play it anywhere from really the late 30s all the way up to the late 1940s. That's up to you. But the base setting is 1938 in our own world, in an alternate reality where basically all the things of myth and legend have always existed. So vampires and ghosts and elves and dwarves and fairies and magic has always been a real thing, and but has come from other planes of existence, other worlds, and slowly seeped in from time to time. Thus, why you always have the reportings of these sort of things. But a great awakening happened at the end of the First World War. Now, some of the wizardly scholars, or magical scholars of the world, say that this great traumatic event kind of was the cause of these mergings between all these worlds, but that's up for debate, and that's kind of just a cool little tie-in for us game masters to use if you want to use it or what have you. But anyways, after at the end of the First World War, this great awakening happened, and the veil was kind of lifted, and all of a sudden people were aware that there actually were vampires and ghosts and fairies and dragons and magic, and all this stuff was part of our world and had existed here for some time, if not forever, and was even more so because the realities between the worlds started to break a little bit, and these things kind of started pouring in. So that is the setting, and yeah, so that's what this game's going to be about. Now, this is not an entirely original idea, of course. I'm sure you guys are familiar that there's a couple of other games out there that are in a similar vibe, and definitely some other media sources that are in a similar vibe. Namely, I took heavy inspiration from this game, Blood Shadows, from the 90s. Now, I never played Blood Shadows back in the day, but I've had this book for a long time. It always interests me. Always loved the idea of Blood Shadows more than I actually liked the game. So I thought it was cool, the mix of noir, 1930s, 40s, noir mixed with fantasy and whatnot. I always thought that was a cool idea. Always liked those two genres, and it seemed like a good mishmash. Unfortunately, Blood Shadows, I'm not really that big of a fan of the setting itself. Now, in Blood Shadows, the setting is not our world. It's a fantasy world that has advanced to this state of technology level of, the 1940s, essentially. And it's based in a giant city-state that's surrounded in a big wasteland. And it's interesting, but there's a lot of weird things in there that I don't particularly care for. And I have ran some games of Blood Shadows using other systems. Originally, this used the Master Book system, the same system that West End Games developed for the Indiana Jones role-playing game, which I did play back in the day. It was one of the first role-playing games I played, and I still had the books for. But I was never a big fan of that system, and I was never really that big of a fan of the setting of Blood Shadows. Now, there's been some other versions of Blood Shadows. They adapted it for D6, and there is a new edition out by some other company that bought the rights to it. And that's all well and good and all. Again, I like the core ideas there, but I didn't like the setting as such. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of do my own twist on that flavor. Pulp noir mixed with urban fantasy, but in our world, I thought would be way more interesting and cool. So that's what I've decided to go with. Now, there are some other inspirations, of course. You could, of course, all the classic noir films from, the 40s, such as, the Maltese Falcon and all that, kind of stuff. And also another big source of inspiration for me was the film To Cast a Deadly Spell. Now, those of you that are not familiar with this film, it was a HBO original film made for cable television. Came out in like 1991 or so. Really good film. If you've never seen it, very fun. I would compare it kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with, mixed with Call of Cthulhu. And that's kind of what you get with To Cast a Deadly Spell. It's a really cool film. Go watch it. It is available. I don't think you can buy it in physical media, but it is available on HBO. So, because I just watched it the other day. So that's another big source of inspiration for this game. And that movie is actually more close to what my setting is for this game. Now, the other source of inspiration for this game was Andy actually came up with this idea. And I should say that, Andy came up with this idea, and Andy is a professional graphics designer and artist. And he saw a fanzine, like a zine format role-playing game. Now, this has fascinated me too in the past, and there's a lot of these kind of games coming out there, like in this fanzine kind of format. And I thought that was really cool. And he was like, "Hey, we should create a role-playing game or role-playing games in this format." And I was like, "Yes, totally. That sounds really cool." So he's going to be handling all the layout, all the art assets, all the the aesthetic design of the game, and I'm more handling the writing and the rules and the setting and all that stuff. I'm taking care of all that. He's taking care of the other elements. So he has as much of a hand in this as I do. Now, what I mean by zine format is like this. This is an actual fanzine. This is not a role-playing game. For the Joe Bob Briggs, this is the Joe Bob Briggs fanzine, the horror host that I'm a fan of, obviously, because I have some fanzines. But these little fanzines, which are still in print today, this is the kind of format that I'm talking about. Also, here's a couple examples of like some games. These are war games, but they're in a zine format. They're in this small kind of booklet fanzine format that you would staple together and that kind of thing. So that was the idea for making the physical format of this game, and that's what we're doing. But the other design philosophy for the game itself is, yes, I wanted to do a small booklet fanzine kind of format, which I thought was really cool. But I also wanted it to be a full game, not just a half-ass game. And also a game that could have some legs, that's actually like playable and you can play a full campaign with, and is very rules light and easy to grasp and easy to play around with, and has lots of cool ideas. But it's still a robust enough system where you could have like a full-length campaign, not just a little one-shot or that's just locked into one certain idea. So that is the basic premise for what I'm working with here. Now, I have two playtest groups that I'm going to be playing this with live here on the channel. One of the groups you guys are familiar with, which is our Tuesday night group, which was the group that we were playing Star Trek with. Those fellows and gal will be playing, I'll be running the game. We'll be doing a playtest session on Tuesday nights, hopefully in about a week, tentatively, I think. Or maybe this week. I don't know. I have to get back to you. But there's a little bit of scheduling conflict there, so we'll have to figure it out. But in the next week or so, we will be starting up a campaign that I'll be running to playtest this rule set. I also have another playtest group, and it consists of Andy, his brother Vince, Phil the Thrill, which you guys might be familiar with, and Chase, which you guys know as well because he has played in a few of my other games. And possibly one other, I'm not sure. But anyways, that will be the other group, and I think we'll be live streaming that too. And I'm going to try to make those games a little bit distinct from each other, so they're not just doing the same kind of thing. So look forward to that. Should be pretty cool and really give you guys a taste for the system. But tonight, I just wanted to announce that, yes, I am working on this game. Yes, it will be released here in the coming months, hopefully. It shouldn't. The manuscript is basically there, and we're going to look at the rules tonight to give you an idea of what this game is going to be about, and the mechanics and nitty gritty. and all that stuff, and it's something to look forward to. I don't have a release date yet because, again, this is just a passion project that me and Andy are working on, and we both have full-time jobs, and obviously, that our paying gigs kind of take precedence over our passion projects. And so, this is something that we've been working on in our spare time. I do not have any art assets or any of the cool stuff to show you guys right now. I don't even have a logo to show you guys. So any kind of things you see like that, thumbnails, trailers, art assets, or anything that gets floated around the next few days or tonight is not necessarily indicative of what is to come for the actual game. Just keep that in mind. Any art you see in the rough draft, which this is a rough draft playtest document we're going to look at tonight, is AI generated art, and it's not going to be used in the game. It's just there to inspire me. I like to use those things to inspire me and get me in the mood. So without further ado, let's take a look at the we're going to take a look at the rough draft of the rule system I have and check that out. So I'm going to switch over here now. Unfortunately, my software here is being a little funky, so I'm going to go black for a minute, and I'll be right back on. Like so. There we go. Okay. So here we go. Wizards of Shadow City. Now, there's a lot of things that have changed already that I haven't had a chance to write up yet. So, the setting for this game was very different from what it is now. Originally, I based this more like what Blood Shadows did in an actual fantasy world. Then I decided it would be a lot cooler to base it in our worlds. So a lot of the setting stuff is going to change in here, and this is just a rough draft, but it is it is pretty close to what I want. So here we go. So I got a little introduction here, which is not really indicative of what the actual setting is. Now, the basics of the game. The basics of the game, this is a 2d6 system. All you need is 6-sided dice for this game. There is nothing really crazy or gimmicky. I didn't want any gimmicks in this game. I didn't want anything complicated. I wanted something rules light but still feel robust. So this is a 2d6 system. You roll 2d6, you add your attribute, you add your skill, you try to beat a difficulty rating. Simple as that. So you're looking for a certain target number. Attributes and skills go from basically 0 is average and 4 is the best. For an attribute, skills go up to 4. It's the highest you can go. You do have luck points, which is a system that I think everybody's familiar with. This comes from a lot of different games. Everybody starts with 2 luck points unless you have a boon or a bane, which we'll look at later. And basically a luck point gives you an advantage die. And what that means is you roll an extra die, and you take the highest of the 2 dice when you spend a luck point. Making a character. So the first thing you do is you have 4 stats. You have brawn, agility, mind, and presence. You get 4 points to distribute amongst your attributes, and all your attributes start at 0. So you assign your 4 points. After you assign your 4 points, you get a one-time subtraction of 1 point to add to another one. So you can subtract 1 point from an attribute to add to another one. You can only do that once, though. Again, all this stuff might change, but this is the initial, rules we have now. The next thing you do, which this is kind of out of order, I've changed the order. This is buy boons and banes. What boons and banes are basically advantages and disadvantages, right? Or perks and flaws. And you get 2 points to spend on boons. You can buy up to 2 points in banes, which give you either more points to spend on boons, or you can translate those into skill points. So boons, you have wealth, which everybody starts with a wealth level of 2, which is a working stiff, but you can spend more points to get wealth. There's contacts. Now, some of this looks very familiar from other role-playing games, and you can tell where a lot of the inspirations for this stuff comes from, namely like, the World of Darkness and things like that. Ally, you can buy an ally for 1 to 2 points. The wizard boon, which the boon you have to take to be a wizard or a magician in order to use magic. You can take this up to 4 ranks in this boon, and for every rank you take, you can take a rank of the magic skill, which allows you to use magic, and we'll look at magic here in a little bit. Fey Folk, which is, probably going to change the name of this to something else, because I want this to reflect that you can play an inhuman being, not necessarily just a Fey, but you could play like a half demon, or maybe even a vampire, whatever you and the game master decide is fair. And basically you get to play one of these inhuman creatures, and the way this works out is you and the game master kind of making a negotiation back and forth. And there's a lot of that in this game, because I like to do this anyways when I game master, and I kind of incorporate that into the rules, is that there is a lot of this barter system, and encourages the game masters and the players to come up with their own choices and make some compromises as far as these kind of decisions. So there's some examples here like troll and dwarf and elf and goblin, but you can make up your own, and basically you would get a bonus to one of your attributes, a penalty to one, and you get an advantage of some sort, basically another boon, right? So for example, like Bunny in one of my playtest games decided she wanted to play a half succubus. And I was like, okay, we can do that. So, I gave her +1 to presence, and I think she got -1 to brawn, and she got an ability that she could use once a day that allowed her basically to magically seduce somebody. And we'll figure out how that works in the game. I haven't really figured it out yet. The other things you have Psychic Medium, which is a 2-point boon, which allows you to be a psychic, essentially. And psychics in this are more like what you think of psychics in popular culture, in that they just have a sixth sense about things, and it's up to the GM. You kind of get creative as a player what you can do with those abilities. It's not necessarily like you would like psychic powers in most role-playing games where you have like telekinesis. You're not Jean Grey, really. You're more of like, a psychic medium like you would see on TV or whatever, right? You can touch objects and maybe get a sense of, if there's any kind of like psychic energy there, or you could open up your third eye or something and see if there's any ghosts in the room, or, whatever it encourages the player to get creative. And I always encourage those things anyways. So some of the stuff is kind of vague on purpose. Tough is a 1-point boon, gives you additional hit points. Lucky gives you 1 additional luck point. You always start with 1 luck point. And finally, we have Enchanted Item, which is you get a special enchanted item, a magical item, essentially. And you have to negotiate that with your game master as far as what that is. There's no examples here, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to put a few examples attached to this boon so people get an idea of what those may be. Next up, we have Banes, which are the disadvantages. And these, like I said, these give you either more points and boons, or they give you extra skill points. You have Very Poor. Basically, you start off with a wealth level of 0. Enemy, and this is a variable. If whatever this number is how many points it gives you or costs. And if there's 2 numbers there, it's a variable. And for enemy, it's a 1 to 2, depending on how powerful your enemy is. Unlucky, you start with 0 luck points and may never have more than 1 in your pool. Old, you either your brawn or agility is -1, may never go higher than a rating of 3, and you gain 2 additional skill points, and may have 1 skill at rating 4 at character creation. Young, you're not yet an adult. You start off with only 3 points for your starting attributes and 8 skill points. Bad habit, you're addicted to something. Probably not cigarettes because it's 1938, but something else that you have to have, otherwise it's a big detriment to you. Dark Past, this is a variable from 1 to 2 depending on how bad your dark past is, whatever kind of skeletons you have in the closet. And Impairment is a 1-point bane, and it's some kind of hindrance, either like maybe you have 1 eye or a gimp leg from an old war wound, and you get some kind of penalty from it. Again, and you come up with some kind of negotiation between you and the game master. So that's the Banes and Boons, and there might be some that are added or subtracted there, but that's generally what we have right now. Next, we have skills. So skills, you have 10 points to distribute amongst your initial skill points, unless you have a Bane or Boon or something that gives you more or less. Now, the skill list is pretty small, and it's a very broad skill list. I did not want to get deep into the weeds with a very detailed skill list here. So we have a very broad skill list that can cover a lot of different situations, but I think it pretty much has everything there that you're going to need for this type of game. And I also say in here, you're encouraged to create a new skill if there's something there that you feel as a player is not there, and you, again, negotiate that with your GM. But you have athletics, brawl, weapons, guns, stealth, knowledge, perception, intimidation, seduction, gab, larceny, drive, and magic, which we talked about a little bit. You actually have to have the magic boon in order to gain points in the magic skill. And those are that's the skill list, and you have 10 points. Skills go from +1 to +4. At character creation, you can never have a skill higher than a 3. So that's how skills work. Pretty simple all around. And then we get into combat. Combat is an opposed roll. Initiative is 2d6 plus, your agility. To do an attack, you roll 2d6 plus your attribute plus your skill, and try to get over your opponent's opposed roll, defense roll, depending on what kind of attack. It's usually going to be agility plus like athletics and whatnot. But that could be different in melee combat. It could be brawn plus brawl. It could be opposed roll if you're like in having fisticuffs with somebody or whatnot. There are a couple modifiers for cover and such. And this probably needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, but it's basically here. This is not a granular hex grid, kind of, grid-based kind of combat system. This is very loosey-goosey. There are range bands instead of like very precise distances, because this game is designed to be a theater of the mind role-playing game, not a grid-based miniatures game as such. But you could definitely use miniatures if you wanted to, but it's not, it's not really designed around that. It was really designed with the way I like to play role-playing games, which is a theater of the mind kind of experience. Weapons and gear. So basically, weapons all deal a d6 damage, because you only use 6-sided dice in this game. You notice here that there's different kinds of weapons. Example weapons, they're range, which you have the range bands of close, short. There's close. There's no short ranges on here, but there's close, short, medium, and long. Rate of fire is how many shots you could fire potentially in a turn, and special traits. Now you also have light and heavy. That's what this L and H represent. If it's a light weapon, you roll 2d6, take the lowest. If it's a heavy weapon, you roll 2d6 and take the highest. Some of these have a modifier +1 or +2, and some of them have some special traits. And that's basically how damage works. I should say this just uses a hit point system, at least for now. I might change that down the road, but right now we're just using hit points. You do not gain any more hit points. There are no levels in this game, so whatever hit points you start with is how many you have, and you could die. This is not a D&D experience where you're a cushion, a pinata of hit points. Like if you get shot and you don't have a lot of hit points, more likely most people are only going to take 1 or 2, maybe 3 shots and with a gun or something, and they could potentially die. I am using an ammo roll system instead of keeping track of ammo in this game, because this is a Hollywood kind of game. I'm not too concerned with counting bullets. So the way it works is if you fire a gun, you roll d6. If you roll a 6, you're out of ammo, or the weapon's jammed, or some kind of malfunction happened. And you have to spend a turn reloading or unjamming your weapon, or whatever the game master calls for. If you are shooting multiple shots, you add +1 to your ammo roll for every additional shot you fire. So that accounts for like the Tommy gun that can shoot 3 times in a round. Well, if you're shooting all 3 times in a round, you add +3 to your roll for your ammo roll, because you're firing a big spray of bullets. Yeah. Other types of gear, there's not going to be an extensive list of gear and stuff. This is not a D&D type game where you're buying like all your equipment and stuff. That's not really what this game is all about. So there's not an extensive list of gear here and a bunch of prices and stuff. And in fact, the money system is abstracted with the wealth levels. So if you want to buy something, the game master, would say, yes, you can afford that, or no, you can't afford it, or make a roll based on your wealth level. And as far as like character creation goes, the GM and the player again negotiate as far as what kind of, gear you would obviously carry on you that's appropriate for your character. So that's how that works. And I give some examples here, and I'll probably make a more extensive list, but I didn't put any prices or anything in here because money's abstracted, because this is not like a loot game. It's not an important part of what this game's about. So I didn't think it was important to list all that stuff. Next up, we have Magic. Magic is an improvisational system in Wizards of Shadow City. It works just like any other kind of skill test. You roll 2d6, you add your skill or attribute, which is mind, and your skill plus magic, and try to beat a target number. How do you come up with that target number? Well, every spell starts off with a difficulty rating of 9, and then you add modifiers based on what you want to do with the spell. Once you cast a spell once, your character is assumed to know that spell. You can write it down as a rote, and you know that spell for now on, and you don't have to go through the improvisation again. But I like improvisational magic systems. We're going to have to test this out to see if it works. We haven't play tested this yet, so this is all in the works, but this is basically how it's going to work. And there's some example modifiers here for damage and healing and range and other effects that you could add to it, and your GM will tell you what your final target number is. However many points you go over however many modifiers you add is how much mana it costs to cast that spell. Every Magic user has a mana pool that they use, spell points essentially, to cast a spell, and they use up those mana points based on how difficult the spell is to cast. So that's how it works right now. That's subject to change, but right now it sounds like it's going to work pretty good. And there's a couple example spells here, like a sleep spell and a fireball. You can also miscast if you roll a 2 on your casting roll. You get a miscast and you roll 2d6 and see what happens. Experience and advancement. This works a lot like of other role-playing games. You get a certain number of experience points at the end of the session, and you can use those experience points to either improve one of your skills, improve an attribute, or get a new boon. These costs might change again, depending. Right now, this sounds about right, but I'd have to play it a few times to see how that works out. Next up, we're going to have some information on the Shadow City. This is all changed now, so like all this writing I did here is going away, and this is going to get replaced, but there will be a section here about the Shadow City. And basically, Shadow City is a fictional city in the Northeast. It's actually called, right now, it's called New Northwick. But its nickname is the Shadow City because it has this constant overcast over the city, and is always raining, of course, because it's, noir. And that's due to, because it is a kind of a ley line, a nexus of magical energy, and maybe like a maybe like, the veils between all these worlds. There's portals and stuff there, so it kind of attracts all these magical creatures and magic and weird things from other dimensions here in the city. So that's another reason it has the name Shadow City. So, but all this is going to change because my whole ideas have changed here. But there will be a little section about, giving a rough idea of what the Shadow City is all about. And hopefully a map too. I'm looking into either me doing a map or maybe getting somebody else to do, sorry, my nose is really itchy, a map of Shadow City. So we will have that, but I'm also going to encourage people to, come up with their own setting. You don't have to use Shadow City. You could make your own city up. You could base this in, a fantasy world like Blood Shadows. You could play it in the Blood Shadows world. You could base this in another real world city like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, or, like I said, make up your own city. So this is just an example to get your brain flowing, and this is not going to be overly detailed either. Even though I'm thinking about, after this comes out, if it does pretty well, I might do another booklet just on Shadow City and like have a more detailed breakdown of some NPCs and locations and stuff. So creatures and denizens. So there'll be a listing of different creatures and different types of people you meet here. Some profiles for some NPCs and monsters to fight. There will also be some archetypes in here, some pre-made characters to give people ideas. And then I'm going to have some other stuff in here, like, you know, some inspirations, where the game came from, and kind of an appendix in kind of thing. And like I said, my final goal is to actually have a map of the city in the back. So that is basically, you know, that's basically, you know, the rough draft right now of Wizards of Shadow City. I'm really excited about this project. I'm really excited to actually, you know, play test and play the game. And in the coming months, this will be like a real release, and you guys will get your hands on it. Now, I think we're going to try to get like this printed up in an actual physical, limited physical release from a third-party company, and sell it in some stores locally and some other places, whatnot. But it will be available online, of course, on DriveThruRPG, and it's going to be a pretty low. I'm not going to sell this for very much, because it is a zine type role-play game. So we're looking at, you know, $5 to $10 range probably for this kind of thing, depending on you know what we think is appropriate. But it's going to be a pretty low price point, because that's kind of the idea that we're doing here. So anyways, I'm going to end the video there. Hopefully you guys are excited about this project as much as I am. Look forward to the actual game sessions coming up. And also, Mage's Musing worked up a trailer, which is really cool. I didn't show it here, but I will post it up once it's all finished. A trailer for the upcoming game, but it's a really cool kind of like introductory trailer to the actual like game setting and system. So it's pretty cool. He did a really good job on it, and look forward to that. I will be posting that on the channel as well. So it's good to be back. Thanks a lot, guys, for all the support in the future and now. I see we've got a few new subscribers, which is cool. You know, welcome to the channel. Hopefully I don't disappoint. And like I said, I will be trying to get back into doing some other videos here in the near future. So look forward to that. And until then, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.